Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. We're broadcasting from the Mackinac Policy Conference. We come here to understand what business, nonprofit, and political leaders are doing to try to improve the state, to do things like increase the population, grow the economy, and expand educational outcomes. So what are the strategies being discussed to do these things? And what kinds of policy changes might help usher them along? To discuss this now, we have Annalise Frank with us. She's a reporter covering Detroit for Axios. Annalise, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. So good to be here.
So first and foremost, why are you here? What are you trying to learn?
Yes, so I've been covering the mayor's race in Detroit, and there, of course, is going to be a debate tomorrow night among 5 candidates, and so here for that, and also just to get a sense of what business and philanthropic and political leaders want to see from the next leaders of Detroit. You know, we're also going to see, potentially some turnover on city council, so it could, and we're also, Mayor Mike Duggan's not running for reelection, so it's kind of a new time for Detroit next year. And so what are the policy priorities? How do we, as you said, grow population in Detroit? Mm-hmm. How do we, improve neighborhood corridors? There's just so much to talk about and limited funding to do it.
And we just had Santiel Jenkins, a mayoral candidate, on the show just moments ago. Tell us who the 5 candidates are that will be participating in that forum tomorrow, and maybe you could just briefly distill a thing or two about each that struck you so far.
Yes, so we're going to see Council President Mary Sheffield, and she, of course, is the president of City Council, and we've known for a while that she's going to be running for mayor, and she's definitely seen by a lot of people as, among
the front
runners.
Yeah.
Yes. And, she's really running on a platform of what she's accomplished during her time on city council, that she, talks to residents every day as part of that job, and is also, she says, connected to developers and business leaders in Detroit, and kind of weaving that web of, connecting with people and also, the financial forces that are also shaping the city.
Which sounds like she's kind of speaking to Duggan's legacy a little bit there in terms of her being able to continue that.
I think, her and some other candidates, they and I'm not saying they talk about Duggan in the same way, but there is this sentiment of like, Mayor Duggan has, I think some people put it as laid a foundation of growth, but I think there is this narrative of, we need to extend some of this, more of this prosperity to neighborhoods.
Right.
Downtown has changed a lot. We need to get, residents who don't live downtown kind of change their lives more and help them benefit more. And so that's definitely a sentiment that a lot of the candidates, including her, have been expressing. And then we have Councilmember Fred Durhal, who's also running, and he's a former legislator, and so he's sort of saying that he has this experience, this leadership can bring together Lansing and Detroit and kind of push Detroit's agenda in Lansing, and so that's one area where I think he sees differentiating himself. And then Pastor Solomon Kinlock is another candidate who has sort of emerged in some polling doing quite well, and sees himself as like a convener of different forces, and says that being a pastor, I mean, he has sort of provided some social services, even like laptops during the pandemic, and sees himself as connected and sort of bringing a new fresh perspective that he says Detroiters want to see in government. You mentioned Santiel Jenkins, who just spoke and, has experience in nonprofit world as well as public office. And so That's kind of, she's also trying to bridge that gap,
Who's standing out to you right now the most?
I think that everyone is in some ways their messages are similar, right? Neighborhood growth, public safety is so important. And, and also James Craig, I believe will be in this debate, and he's a, former police chief. And so we're seeing all these different messages, and I think we need to see more specifics, really. And that's, other people have said this as well, it's not just me, but we want to see plans, because you can say, you want to improve neighborhoods, you want to raise people's standard of living, grow the middle class, but like, how exactly do we do that, and how can you differentiate yourself from what Duggan did? And, make that future that you're talking about.
Yes, we want specific examples, and it's been hard to get those thus far from these mayoral candidates.
Yes.
We're talking about the policy conference here in Mackinac. This is the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. We're speaking with Annalise Frank, a reporter covering Detroit for Axios. You've kind of touched on this a little bit, but talk about, if you could, Annalise, how Detroit is impacted by this conference.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people in government and in philanthropy and business who do business in the city, and some of them are Detroit voters, and some are they will not vote in this election, but their businesses will be highly impacted by this next mayor. And so there's this element of who's money is a real force in this race, and so who's going to be shaping this race, how. And I think what I have heard is candidates could really differentiate themselves in this debate tomorrow and potentially get more money, and that could really shape the race and change it. We still have a lot of time, even though there are certain front runners. And there's also the idea that business deals have been made at this conference, and maybe a policy could be influenced. I think there's an idea that Detroit residents may not be as represented at the conference as they could be, and it's a criticism we hear a lot. And so the challenge is always I think for people who want to make a difference here, how do we do that in a real way that's not just talking. And so I think there's some conversations about public spaces that could be interesting. Obviously politics affects people's lives, so that'll impact them. I'm sure there's more.
We're going to bring you back to hear about more of what you have observed this year. Annalise Frank, she's a reporter with Axios Detroit. Thank you for joining us on the Metro here at the Mackinac Policy Conference.
So good to be here. Thanks.
The Metro is produced by Sam Corey, Carrie Jr. II, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Our senior producer is David Lyons. I'm co-host Robin Vincent, along with Tia Graham. Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.